They showed up with clipboards and fake smiles. "We just need a spare key," the HOA president said. "For emergencies," they claimed. But the moment I handed them that key, they tried using my private property like a shortcut. What they didn't know was that the land they were stomping on wasn't just fenced, it was federally protected, and I had already called the sheriff. Let's just say the next time they came knocking, they weren't asking for keys, they were answering the door to cops with warrants. I moved out to this slice of heaven 3 years ago. Quiet woods, a wide open sky, and my own stretch of gravel road leading to a gorgeous, untouched lake. It was old family land, left to me by my granddad, who fought hard to keep developers away. For decades, this lake was our secret getaway. No signs, no neighbors, just pine trees, loons calling, and the kind of silent city folks pay thousands for on Airbnb. But a few months ago, everything changed. Some real estate firm bought up a tract of land about half a mile down from me. They built 50 homes, bright siding, fake shutters, a neighborhood. Worse, they formed an HOA. At first, I didn't care. They stayed on their side. I stayed on mine. Then I started noticing strange cars driving past my property line, slow, suspicious, and clearly lost. A few even turned around in my driveway. Still, I let it slide. Until one day, I found a pair of kids fishing off MY Dock. I approached them gently. "Hey, there, you guys know this is private land, right?" One of them shrugged. The lady from our neighborhood said, "We could come here." She said the lake's for everyone. Lady from their neighborhood? That's when I first heard the name. Karen Wexley, president of the Lake Pineview HOA. The next day, a letter showed up in my mailbox. To the property owner at 403 Pine Trail, the Pineview HOA would like to formally request access to the lakeside gate located at your property line, as it provides the most direct route to the shared lakefront amenity. We ask that a spare key be provided to HOA leadership to ensure emergency access. We thank you for your cooperation and community spirit. Cooperation? Community spirit? There was no shared lakefront amenity. This lake had never been part of any development plan. It was surveyed and locked into my deed. All of it. I ignored the letter. 3 days later, they came in person. It was Karen and 2 other HOA board members, Gary and Lindsay. Karen looked exactly how you'd imagine. Oversized sunglasses, clipboard, stiff smile that never reached her eyes. "We're just following up about the key," she said. I stared blankly. There's been some concern that in the event of a fire or emergency, it might be important for residents to have lake access from multiple points. Gary piped up, "It's really a safety thing." I looked from one to the other. "You realize this isn't your land, right?" Karen's smile faltered. "The lake is a shared feature of the area, and you live adjacent to Pineview. That makes you a stakeholder." "No," I said, "it makes me your neighbor, not your member." She held out an envelope. "We're willing to offer a small compensation, $50 monthly just for the gate access." I couldn't help but laugh. "Let me make this real clear," I said, stepping forward. "This road, this land, this gate, it's mine. It's in my deed. It's surveyed, marked, and protected by federal wetland conservation law." Karen's smile dropped completely. "If I ever find anyone from your HOA on my land again without permission, I won't be sending letters. I'll be calling law enforcement." They left without another word. I thought that was the end of it. I was dead wrong. 2 weeks later, I noticed the padlock on my gate was different. Same brand, same look, but the key I had didn't fit. I checked the security footage from the trail cam nearby. Sure enough, Gary, at 2:37 a.m., swapping my padlock out for an identical-looking one, I saw red. They hadn't just ignored my boundary. They'd trespassed, tampered with my property, and tried to make it look like nothing happened. That was when I decided no more warnings. I called my buddy Sheriff Todd, who'd grown up with me around these woods, and told him everything. He came out that evening, walked the line with me, reviewed the footage, and said, "Oh, they done messed up. That's breaking and entering and tampering with private access on protected wetland. You got 'em cold." I handed over the footage, He said he'd be in touch, but I wasn't done. If they wanted to play stupid games, they were about to win very real prizes. I replaced the lock again, this time with a smart padlock that sent alerts to my phone whenever anyone tampered with it. Then I posted a set of clear federal warning signs all around the property line. Private property, federally protected wetland. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. That wasn't just a scare tactic. I contacted a federal land conservator who had helped my grandfather file the wetlands claim. He issued a statement reinforcing that any unauthorized access, including foot or vehicle traffic, was subject to both state and federal penalties. I sent a copy of that statement to the HOA's official address. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 mornings later, my phone buzzed. Smart lock, alert, gate tampering detected. I pulled up the feed. It was Karen and Lindsay trying to cut the new lock. They had no idea they were being watched. Within 15 minutes, Sheriff Todd and a deputy were pulling into their neighborhood. I followed a few minutes behind. By the time I got there, Todd was already on Karen's porch, showing her the footage on his iPad. She looked pale. Lindsay kept saying, "We thought it was a community access point." Todd shut that down fast. "No, ma'am. You were told it was private. You entered anyway. And you damaged property? That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime." Then he turned to me. "You want to press charges?" I nodded. Karen nearly fainted. Over the next week, everything unraveled for them. The HOA tried to hold an emergency board meeting to reassess lake access boundaries. But it was too late. The sheriff had already filed misdemeanor trespassing charges. And because it involved tampering with a federally protected gate, the State Department of Environmental Conservation was looped in. Turns out, this wasn't the first time Karen's HOA had tried to expand boundaries. There were pending complaints from another landowner 2 towns over. Now she was facing multiple charges, fines, and potentially civil suits. The Pineview HOA board voted to remove her as president within 10 days. But the cherry on top? They had to send a formal letter of apology signed by the new board, promising to never attempt access or refer to the lake as a shared amenity again. After the dust settled from Karen's charges, things went quiet for about a week. Then one evening, my phone rang. It was an old man named Robert Franks, a retired county surveyor who used to work with my granddad back in the day. He'd seen the sheriff's report and wanted to talk about a curious oversight. We met up at the local diner. He brought a manila envelope that looked older than I was. Inside, original survey maps from 1969 showing the lake's boundary and something else. An unrecorded easement tied to mineral rights beneath the lake bed. My granddad had paid to preserve the land above, but never touched the rights below. Franks explained that technically those underground rights had expired on the public registry, which meant if you move fast, you could file a full land trust and take legal control over both the surface and subsurface rights. Anyone trying to use the lake, even the water, would need your written permission. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I started reading. By morning, I had spoken with an attorney, filed the trust, and launched a quiet legal claim with the county clerk. And just like that, I didn't just own the land. I owned the entire lake. The news dropped like a bomb. Within 48 hours of filing, a notice was posted at the HOA clubhouse. Please be advised, Lake Pineview is no longer designated as community space. All activities, including boating, swimming, and dock use, are suspended pending resolution with the new land trust holder. Cue chaos. HOA members flooded their message boards. Emails flew. Some even showed up at my gate, pleading, bargaining, or worse, threatening. One guy shouted, "You can't just take a whole lake from people." I didn't say much, just held up a printed copy of the federal trust order. Some folks were reasonable. I even met a family who apologized for the earlier nonsense and asked if they could rent access for the summer. I gave them a discounted rate. But the rest, especially the old guard who backed Karen, they were furious, desperate, and that's when they made their next big mistake. It started as a whisper on the Pineview Community app. We can pressure the county to reverse this. By the end of the week, the HOA had drafted an official petition to reclassify Lake Pineview as a shared emergency asset under the Community Protection Clause. Basically, they were trying to pull a legal end run around my ownership. They didn't know I had a mole. One of the new board members, Jenna, was secretly feeding me everything. Screenshots, meeting notes, even their lawyer's drafts. When I read their plan, I laughed. Their angle was weak. It relied on claiming emergency access rights through my land again. But instead of confronting them, I waited. I let them submit it to the county board. And 2 days later, my attorney filed a countermotion with full documentation, maps, the Conservation Trust, and video evidence of their prior trespassing and tampering. The county dismissed their petition in under 15 minutes. Even better, the rejection was made public record. They weren't just defeated, they were embarrassed. About a week later, I got a letter, no envelope, just folded and shoved under my gate. It was from Gary. We were wrong. Karen screwed up. We're trying to move forward, and we're hoping you'd be willing to consider a long-term lease agreement for access to a small part of the lake for HOA events. Discreet, generous compensation. Let's talk. Now here's the twist. I didn't say no. I invited Gary to a meeting at my lake cabin. He showed up in slacks and a sweaty polo shirt, looking like a man on the edge. I laid out a basic offer. They could lease 10 feet of shoreline away from my dock for a flat fee of $10,000 a year. No permanent structures. No keys. Supervised visits only. Gary choked. That's robbery. I shrugged. Then find another lake. But I could tell he was tempted. That lake view? Worth a fortune to Pineview's housing value. He said he'd take it to the board. I already knew what was coming next. They weren't going to accept my terms. They were going to try something much dumber. It happened in early spring. A bulldozer showed up on the western edge of the lake, where the Pineview property technically ended but sloped into my conservation zone. I got the drone up. What I saw, they were clearing trees, paving gravel, trying to make their own road to the lake around my gate. Problem was, they didn't just cross into my land. They cut through wetland territory marked and flagged by the county. And that's a felony. I made one call to the state Environmental Crimes Unit. They sent a drone team out that weekend. And by Monday, the entire construction site was taped off with yellow markers and warning signs. Their hired contractor? Fined. The HOA? Under investigation. And me? I was just getting started. 3 weeks after the bulldozer fiasco, Gary quit. Word spread fast. The board president who once swaggered around like a local kingpin had handed in his resignation. But what really rattled them wasn't Gary's exit. It was the letter he left behind. It wasn't supposed to go public, but it leaked just like everything else in Pineview. Inside, he confessed to knowing Karen had broken the law when she took the keys, and worse, that other board members had backed her plan, knowing it violated property trespass laws and federal conservation boundaries. He even listed names. Jenna sent me a copy. I printed it and kept it in a drawer just in case. The HOA scrambled. Emergency meetings. Talk of new elections. Half the neighborhood furious at the other half. Meanwhile, my lake remained untouched, quiet, peaceful. And then I received a certified envelope from a name I hadn't seen in years. Crawford and Teams, LLP, my grandfather's old law firm. Apparently, there was more to the lake than anyone realized. I met with a man named Howard Teams' second-generation partner. He slid a dusty file across the table. Inside, a copy of a secondary deed, handwritten by my grandfather in 1981. A safe deposit record linked to a small bank in town, and a sketch, not a map exactly but a layout, of something under the lake. Apparently, before the Conservation Trust, my grandfather had built a storm shelter, an old bunker from the Cold War era. Teams said it wasn't on any city record by design. The layout showed a tunnel entrance near the far dock, now on my side of the lake. Your grandfather always said, this lake is more than it looks. Keep it safe. He meant it literally. That weekend, I rented a mini sub pump and a sonar unit. What I found, A metal hatch under 5 feet of water, sealed shut. My mind raced with questions. What was down there? And why had he never told anyone, not even my dad? It took 2 weeks, a diver, and a rented winch to get the hatch open. What we found: a spiral staircase, rusted but intact, leading into a concrete room the size of a garage. Inside, old crates, a vintage cots and supplies, a water filtration system, and in the corner a safe. No code, but something told me it mattered. I had it hauled out and taken to a locksmith in town. The guy nearly fell overseeing the thing. Haven't cracked one of these since the 70s. 3 hours later, click. Inside was a stack of documents sealed in wax paper. Land contracts, photos, letters. One photo froze me. It was my grandfather standing with a U.S. senator at the lake, shaking hands in front of a sign that said Joint Research Grounds, Private Federal Contract. Was this lake part of some hidden Cold War research? Why hadn't anyone said a word? Then I saw the final document, a revoked easement signed by the senator himself, removing public lake access for security reasons, which meant the HOA's claim to the lake never existed in the first place. Of course, I didn't go public. Not yet. I wanted to see how desperate the HOA would get. And desperate they were. A week after the Gary leak, a new president took over, someone worse, Janet Wells. Former real estate agent. Ruthless. The kind who sold homes like she was closing Wall Street deals. Janet wasn't about drama. She was about power. She sent a letter through her lawyer requesting a community mediation. Translation: they wanted a deal without admitting fault. I attended the meeting. Brought my attorney. Jenna came too, now officially off the board and solidly in my corner. Janet opened with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We believe there's been a series of unfortunate misunderstandings. We propose a joint use contract, shared maintenance, shared access, mutually beneficial. I slid a copy of the revoked easement across the table. Her face dropped. You're bluffing, she hissed. I opened my briefcase and dropped the senator photo, the safe documents, and a notarized letter from Howard Teams. Then I leaned in. No bluff. You don't even have the right to call it your lake. Janet stood up and left without another word. Just when I thought things would finally calm down, a new twist showed up. A black SUV pulled into the gravel road near my cabin. Out stepped a man in a tailored gray jacket, holding a briefcase and a smile. Mr. Granger? I'm with the Department of Interior. I raised an eyebrow. Federal? He nodded. I understand you recently uncovered a Cold War bunker on private conservation land tied to federal records from 1981. We'd like to take a look. I didn't say yes. Not yet. Instead, I asked what they were really looking for. He paused. There's reason to believe your grandfather was involved in a now-declassified technology experiment, one that may have involved equipment still located in the facility beneath the lake. My head spun. First, an HOA war. Now, a forgotten federal experiment. And just like that, my lake wasn't just a quiet retreat anymore. It had become the center of something bigger, much bigger. I told the federal agent I'd call him. Instead, I returned to the bunker with Jenna. We wanted to check every inch before Uncle Sam got his hands on it. In one of the sealed crates, tucked under old tarps and dehydrated meals, was a military-style footlocker. Heavy, locked, marked only with faded stencils, property of DOD, classified, AUTH-LVL for I had no idea what level for meant. But it wasn't for regular folks. We pried it open with a crowbar. Inside were layers of foam, and nestled between them, a metal case the size of a microwave, several black cylinders, a notebook written in shorthand, and Latin. It looked like something out of a spy movie. Jenna snapped pictures while I skimmed the notes. Diagrams, water readings, something about resonance frequencies beneath freshwater bodies. My gut told me this wasn't just research. It was testing for something. And suddenly, I understood why my grandfather had sealed this place off and why the government wanted in. But before I could even process it, the next day, I found a listening device under my dock. I called an old army buddy who now runs a private security firm. We swept my cabin, the dock, the tree line. We found 3 bugs in total, one under my porch light, one on a nearby tree, and one tucked into the gatepost. All active, all transmitting. Not police grade. Not HOA amateur junk either. These are mid-level field devices, my buddy said, gov-adjacent, or someone playing government. We reviewed the drone footage from earlier that week. Sure enough, a black SUV had parked a quarter-mile away 2 nights earlier. Lights off. Guy walked around for maybe 10 minutes. Same SUV that belonged to the Department of Interior agent. At least, that's who he claimed to be. I called the department's regional office. Gave them the badge number off his card. Their response? We don't have anyone by that name. And we don't do Cold War site recoveries. That's Department of Energy or Homeland. So, who exactly had come to my cabin? After the fake agent incident, I knew I couldn't leave the lake unguarded. I installed a full surveillance system, drones, motion cameras, encrypted trail sensors. Jenna moved into the guest cabin. She didn't say it, but I could tell she was nervous too. Something about the notebooks in that bunker rattled her. Late one night, the lake alarm triggered. I rushed out, armed, flashlight in hand. There was a light, faint and blue, hovering just above the water, maybe 40 feet from shore. It wasn't a boat. It didn't make sound. It vibrated like a pulse. Then it blinked out. I checked every camera angle. Nothing captured it. No ripple. No heat signature. Just gone. The next morning, I reviewed the notebook again. One diagram was circled in red ink. Test anomaly. Observed low-frequency surface shimmer during high-resonance phases. Inconclusive. Possibly magnetic. Was this what they were studying? Was the lake doing something? While I was dealing with mystery lights and fake agents, the HOA was unraveling fast. Someone leaked parts of Gary's resignation letter and the county's environmental investigation. 3 homes went up for sale in 1 week. Janet held a public forum trying to spin everything. We are victims of a malicious land grab, she said, but we are pursuing legal remedies. Problem for her? The sheriff, the county clerk, and the Department of Natural Resources had all publicly cleared me. Worse, the local newspaper picked up the story, branding the HOA as a mismanaged mess trying to seize protected private property. Meanwhile, a new vehicle had started showing up at the trailhead near my cabin. Unmarked white van. No plates. No driver in sight. Jenna spotted a tripod sticking out once, long lens, maybe infrared. Someone was watching the lake professionally, and I had the gut-chilling feeling this wasn't about the HOA anymore. It was about what lay beneath the surface. We finally got the sonar rig working again. Jenna and I took the boat out to the center of the lake, right where I saw the strange glow. We dropped the sonar sensor. What we got back was not normal. There were symmetrical readings like pillars about 15 feet below the silt line. A consistent hum. Not natural, like a low throb you could feel in your chest. And something else, a cavity, an underground chamber, maybe 50 feet wide. There shouldn't have been a chamber. The lake isn't volcanic. It's spring-fed. And yet there it was. I marked the coordinates. The next night, someone cut the power to our cabin. The generator kicked in, but whoever did it had been close. Too close. And we still didn't know who they were, or what they were trying to keep hidden beneath my lake. 2 days after the power sabotage, I received an unmarked envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name, typed, not handwritten. Inside, a single sheet of paper, creased and yellowed with age. It was a blueprint, not of a house, but of a facility, subterranean, circular, with corridors radiating from a central core. At the top corner, stamped in faint blue, Project Orbital Well, Site Echo/17 at the bottom, a date, 1974, and a location tag, Pineview Reserve, Reservoir Subgrade Layer. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a lake, not originally. It had been designated as a cover for something built beneath it. I showed the blueprint to Jenna. Her hands trembled. That chamber we found on sonar, she whispered. It's not a cavity. It's a room. One of many. I didn't know who sent it, but someone out there didn't want to steal the lake. They wanted to wake up what was sleeping under it. The night after the blueprint arrived, every single camera on the west side of the lake went dark. All at once. At 2:17 a.m., Jenna and I raced to the control panel. The logs showed no technical failure. It was jammed, remotely. Whoever did it had scrambled our system from nearby. That meant they were close. We grabbed flashlights and weapons and headed toward the lake. We saw them, just barely, two figures in the tree line crouched near the sonar buoy, black tactical suits, no visible insignias. When our lights hit them, they disappeared into the woods like shadows. They left behind a waterproof case, half buried in the mud. Inside, a small device, round, blinking red. A tracker? A sensor? I uploaded it to a tech friend. He said it looked like an underwater transceiver. Not to track the surface, to communicate with something below. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through the remaining crates in the bunker. We had missed one, tucked deep behind rusted shelving, labeled in faded pen, Personal H. Granger, my grandfather's journal. The final entry, written in shaking handwriting, said this: I hear it sometimes at night. Humming. Not from the air, but the water. Like it's alive or remembering. I tried to tell them it's still active, but the agency denied everything. If you find this, don't let them open the main hatch. It wasn't built to keep people out. It was built to keep something in. I read that line 5 times. Then I went back to the sonar logs. The hum we recorded, it pulsed at regular intervals. Almost like a heartbeat. We drilled just enough to insert a drop camera through the silt and into the cavity. What we saw made my skin crawl. The walls of the underground chamber were lined with metal plating, not corroded, but pristine. In the center, a large vault door, not circular like a submarine, more like a containment gate. It had warnings stenciled on it. Biohazard, level Omega authorized access, only Project Orbital Well Failure TO maintains seal equals system event. Jenna leaned in. Your grandfather didn't just own land. She pointed at the top of the door, where a name was etched into the alloy. H. Granger, Chief Containment Officer. My grandfather wasn't just a landowner. He had been the custodian of this place, whatever this even was, and now it had become my problem. Just as we were starting to process everything, the HOA struck again. They issued a new legal notice, this time accusing me of environmental violations and withholding historical artifacts of federal interest. The kicker? They had filed it with the state attorney general's office. Janet wasn't behind this one. She'd resigned quietly last week. This time, it came from a newly formed committee inside the HOA, the Pineview Preservation Council. A front, no doubt, but this time backed by outside funding. Their lawyer was from D.C. Their brief included satellite photos, references to decommissioned federal sites, and a formal request for emergency access to my property. This wasn't about neighbors anymore. This was a hostile acquisition backed by someone who knew what was buried under that lake. But they still didn't know that my grandfather had left behind one more key. We took the recovered key card to Jenna's contact at a federal archive. Quietly, off the books. He ran the card through an old system buried in the network. The screen flickered, loading a hidden directory labeled G01, Emergency Lockdown Protocol. Inside were a handful of files, but one folder was locked behind a biometric prompt. We bypassed it. 3 surveillance photos loaded. The first, a room full of scientists in hazmat suits surrounding what looked like a large metallic cylinder glowing faint red. The second, a vault door partially open, mist spilling from within, and something just out of frame, casting a shadow on the floor. The third, it hit me like a gut punch. A man in a white coat, clipboard in hand. No suit, no helmet, staring directly into the camera. It was my grandfather. Beneath the photo, the caption read, Dr. Henry Granger, Chief Containment Officer, terminated, status unknown. I looked at Jenna. Her voice was barely a whisper. He didn't just build the facility. He was part of the secret. Days later, heavy rain rolled in and the lake rose 2 feet overnight. Sonar logs picked up tremors again, stronger than anything we'd seen before. The pulse wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm, a pattern. We rushed to the shack as the system screamed a warning. Seismic event detected below layer 3. On screen, we watched as the vault door below the lake slowly creaked open. Only inches, but enough. Jenna's drone was already in the air, dropping a camera through the buoy system we'd set up. As it descended through layers of debris, we watched the inside of the chamber come into view. And then movement. Not a machine. Not a flood of water. Not even an animal. Something massive. Breathing. Ancient. It moved slowly. Then stopped. And then it looked up. Toward the drone. Toward the surface. Toward us. We triggered the emergency protocol with the keycard. It worked. For now. Massive steel locks engaged across the chamber door. Water pressure normalized. The pulses slowed. But not before that shape below turned again, not coiling this time, but rising. It knew we were watching. That night, a signal came through our sonar equipment. Just 3 words pulsed back at us in broken sound waves. "You're too late." I don't know if it was a message or a warning. We backed up everything, every log, every video, every image. Sent encrypted copies to off-site contacts, including a military archivist and a journalist we trust. If we go silent, others will know, because something was buried down there. And now it's stirring. We've done all we could, honored my grandfather's warnings, protected the gate. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. And if you're still here, listening, you've seen enough to understand. The truth matters, especially the kind that no one wants told. Like the video if the story pulled you in, and subscribe for more true fiction stories that cut deeper than most people expect. We've got more coming. And next time, you might want to bring a flashlight